If you ever thought that family is a pillar of support, my story might make you think again. I once believed in family bonds, but when my daughter needed help the most, my parents, the very people who should have stood by me, chose parties and prestige instead. Now, after losing everything, they come back begging for my help. But I am no longer the weak man I used to be. I am Daniel, 32, and the owner of a small interior design company in Austin, Texas. I'm not wealthy, but I'm not struggling either. I earn enough to care for my wife and my 8-year-old daughter, Lily. I work hard to maintain a stable life. Not extravagant, but free from the daily worries of making ends meet. My family isn't part of the upper class, but my parents, Martin and Linda, have always wanted to appear that way. They run a well-known family-owned furniture store. Not rich, but well off enough to afford a spacious home, nice cars, and weekend parties with friends. To them, success isn't measured by happiness but by how others perceive them. I'm the eldest son, and my younger brother, Ryan, is just 2 years behind me. Even as a child, I could feel the favoritism. If I got an A, my parents would nod, saying it was expected. But if Ryan got a B+, they would celebrate with a cake. When I went to college, they barely acknowledged it, but when it was Ryan's turn, they threw a huge farewell party for him, even though he was only attending a local school. Growing up in that environment, I quickly learned I couldn't rely on my family. I threw myself into work, became independent, and built everything from scratch. I never expected anything from my parents, but even then, I could have never imagined the day they would choose a party over their granddaughter's life. After graduating from college, I worked at a small interior design firm in Austin, starting as a design assistant. The job wasn't glamorous, but I loved it. Every blueprint, every little detail in a space gave me the satisfaction of creating something meaningful. 2 years later, after gaining enough experience, I decided to branch out and start my own interior design company. It wasn't big, but it allowed me to be independent and follow my passion. That was when I met Emma. It was a sunny September afternoon. I was managing my small furniture store and was busy rearranging the space. While checking inventory, she walked in, looking for a reading chair. At first, I thought she was just another customer. But somehow we sat down and talked for an hour. About books, music, dreams, and unfinished plans. A year later, we got married. Then came Lily, a small, lively girl with bright, sparkling eyes like my wife, Emma. Emma and I thought nothing could break our happiness when Lily was born. We weren't rich, but we had enough. I ran a small interior design company, and Emma was a preschool teacher. Life was busy, but it was fulfilling. But there was one thing we were too careless about: health insurance. At the time, as a small business owner, I didn't have employer-provided insurance. Private insurance plans were expensive, and since we were all healthy, we decided to put it off until we were more financially stable, a decision I would regret for the rest of my life. Lily was always full of energy. But one winter evening 5 years ago, when she was just 3, I noticed something was wrong. She had a persistent cough at night. At first, Emma and I thought it was just a cold. But the cough didn't go away after a few weeks. It got worse. She became fatigued, lost her appetite, had a low-grade fever that wouldn't break, and sometimes, she would suddenly stop playing to catch her breath. While Emma was playing with her in the living room one afternoon, Lily suddenly collapsed. "Mommy, I'm so tired." Emma panicked, scooping her up and calling me immediately. I rushed over to see my daughter breathing rapidly, her eyes unfocused. Without hesitation, I carried her to the car and drove straight to the emergency room. His expression was tense when the doctor returned with the CT scan results. "Daniel, we've discovered a congenital abnormality in Lily's lung. It's compressing her airway, and she needs surgery immediately before her condition worsens." The ground beneath me collapsed. A 3-year-old? A lung mass? How could this be happening to my child? But the biggest shock was yet to come. The doctor led me to the hospital's billing office, where I was handed a bill for $120,000. "We can proceed with the surgery immediately, but the hospital needs assurance that you can cover the costs. Do you have insurance?" I didn't. At that moment, I realized how terrible a mistake it was to delay getting insurance, thinking we didn't need it. And now my daughter was paying the price for that mistake. I gripped Emma's hand, trying not to panic. "We'll find a way to get the money. Just save my daughter." But how was I supposed to come up with $120,000 in such a short time? And when I thought of my parents, a small part of me still hoped. But I never expected them to disappoint me more than ever. I didn't expect them to embrace me and say, "We'll take care of everything." but at the very least I hoped they would help somehow. Lily was their granddaughter. How could a grandfather and grandmother stand by and do nothing when their grandchild was standing at the edge of life and death? I drove to my parents' house, my heart heavy. When I stepped in, I realized they were busy hosting a party. The house was packed with guests. Live music played, and wine glasses shimmered in the hands of elegantly dressed people. The scent of expensive perfume mixed with the aroma of gourmet food. A celebration for Ryan's upcoming wedding. They were celebrating. Meanwhile, I was desperate, begging for my daughter's life. I walked up to my parents, trying to stay calm. "Mom, Dad, I need to talk to you. It's urgent." My mother frowned, gesturing for me to wait before returning to continue chatting with guests. I had to repeat myself. My voice was no longer steady this time. My father looked at me, annoyed that I was interrupting the party. "Daniel, can't this wait?" I clenched my teeth, struggling to control my anger. "Lily has a tumor in her lung. The doctors say she needs immediate surgery. If she doesn't get it, she might not make it." I paused, waiting for some concern. They should ask, "Where is she?" They should ask, "Is she in danger?" They should ask, "What did the doctor say?" But there was nothing. Not a single question about Lily's condition. Not even a flicker of worry on their faces. I swallowed hard and continued. "The hospital requires a $120,000 payment before they can proceed with the surgery. I've tried everything but can't come up with that amount quickly. Can you help me? I don't need the full amount. Just enough so they can operate immediately." I looked at them, waiting for even a sliver of hope. My mother set down her wine glass and sighed. "Daniel, we've already planned Ryan's wedding. We can't cancel or postpone it now." I blinked, unable to believe what I had just heard. My father crossed his arms, his voice as emotionless as an investor calculating profits. "We've already spent $300,000 on his wedding. If we give you that money now, the wedding won't happen." I stared at them, feeling a cold numbness spread through me. They had spent $300,000 on a lavish wedding for Ryan, yet they wouldn't spare a dime to save Lily's life. I turned to Ryan, my younger brother, who I had always protected, helped, and supported. He stood in a tailored suit, champagne glass in hand, looking at me as if I were an inconvenience. I abandoned my pride. I dropped to my knees right in the middle of the crowded party. "Ryan, I'm begging you, just help with a small part. I'll pay you back. But Lily, she will die without this money." I looked into his eyes, hoping some humanity was still left in him, but he took a step back as if I were some filthy beggar. He scoffed. "You think I'm going to cancel my wedding over this? I am responsible for my fiancé and the family I'm building. I'm sorry, but I can't help." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had just knelt before my brother, and he laughed in my face. Around me, guests whispered. Some chuckled. Others shook their heads as if I were some pathetic fool making a spectacle of himself. My father touched my shoulder, his voice cold as ice. "Get up, Daniel. Stop embarrassing the family in front of our guests." I slowly rose to my feet but was no longer their son. I looked at each of them before speaking, my voice laced with bitterness. "Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Ryan. Today, I finally understand who my real family is, and who is just a stranger." Then I turned and walked away, never looking back. As I exited the house, the sky rose and rain poured. Heavy raindrops pelted my face, but I stood frozen on the doorstep, unable to feel anything except the crushing pain in my chest. I had begged, I had knelt, and in return, all I received was cruel indifference. I rushed to my car, slammed the door shut, and then, for the first time, I broke down and cried like a child. I no longer tried to hold it in. I buried my head against the steering wheel, my sobs choking in my throat. The storm outside blended with the storm raging inside me. But then, an image flashed through my mind. Lily, she was waiting for me. She was fighting for every breath in that hospital room. I couldn't fall apart here. I took a deep breath, wiped my tears, and stepped on the gas, speeding straight back to the hospital. When I arrived at the hospital, my in-laws were already there. They weren't wealthy, just ordinary working-class people. But the moment I stepped inside, my mother-in-law rushed to me, gripping my hands tightly, her eyes red with worry. "Daniel, why are you soaked? Did you talk to your parents? Will they help?" I couldn't answer, but she only needed to look into my eyes to understand. My father-in-law quietly placed a hand on my shoulder. It's okay. We'll figure it out ourselves. We sat down with Emma, determined to act immediately. The following day, I started selling everything I could. My beloved car, gone in an instant for $15,000. Every last cent of our savings, $25,000, completely wiped out. I borrowed from friends and colleagues. The people at my company, many barely making ends meet, still stepped up to help. A young employee, who had only been with us for 6 months, pressed $500 into my hand. Boss, I don't have much, but this is all I can give. An old coworker, someone I hadn't spoken to in years, called and sent me $3,000. I owe you a favor. It's time I repaid it. Every coin, every bill, and every small contribution came together to save Lily. But it still wasn't enough. I sold my computer, my watch, and even our furniture. Our apartment grew emptier by the day, and yet I was still $40,000 short. Just as I was struggling to figure out where to find the remaining $40,000 to reach the $120,000 total, my in-laws called. Daniel, how much more do you need? My father-in-law's voice was steady, unwavering. I swallowed hard, reluctant to say the amount, but I had no other choice. There's still $40,000 left. Silence on the other end. Then my mother-in-law spoke, her voice unusually calm. All right, come pick up the money tomorrow. I was utterly stunned. But where are you getting that much money? My father-in-law let out a soft chuckle, full of love yet filled with determination. We sold our house. As long as Lily gets better, it's worth it. I stood frozen. They had sold their own home to save their granddaughter. My parents had turned their backs on their flesh and blood, yet my in-laws, who shared no blood ties with me, were willing to sacrifice everything for Lily. I couldn't hold back my tears anymore. I don't know what to say. My father-in-law smiled warmly. As long as Lily is healthy, that's all that matters, son. With the final amount from my in-laws, I had gathered all the money. Lily's surgery was a success. When the doctor stepped out of the operating room and said, "The procedure went very well. She will recover gradually," I collapsed onto the chair, burying my face in my hands, feeling relieved, unlike anything I had ever known. Emma sobbed, my mother-in-law held her tightly, and my father-in-law stood there, nodding, as if this had been his plan all along. I looked back at everything that had happened. Family isn't defined by blood. The family comprises those who stand by you in your darkest moments. From that day on, I swore I would never beg my biological parents for anything again, because I had already found my actual family. After the storm, the sky cleared again. Maybe even fate was moved by our family's love for one another, and it finally stopped making things difficult for me. 2 weeks after the surgery, Lily was discharged from the hospital. She grew stronger each day. Each tiny step she took was filled with life. That day, as I pushed her wheelchair out of the hospital, she looked up at me with a bright, radiant smile. "Daddy, I want to run and play again." I couldn't hold back my tears, but this time they were tears of joy. I hugged her tightly, feeling her strong, steady heartbeat. I turned to Emma and met her loving gaze. We had been through hell and back, but were starting a new chapter. But deep inside me, there was still a fire burning. I hadn't forgotten the day I knelt and was turned away. I hadn't forgotten my parents' cold indifference. I hadn't forgotten Ryan's smug smile. They had looked down on me. Now I would show them exactly what I was capable of. After Lily recovered, I threw myself into work. I wasn't just working to make a living. I was working to repay those who had believed in me. I was working to honor those who had helped me. I was working to prove that I didn't need anyone's charity. I would create my destiny. I woke up at 5 a.m. every day, worked 16-hour days. I pushed myself to learn more than ever about management, investments, and business expansion. I wasn't just doing interior design anymore. I started taking on more significant projects, hotels, shopping centers, and office buildings. I never turned down an opportunity. Sleepless nights chasing deadlines, endless meetings with clients, high-stakes negotiations. Every challenge fueled the fire burning inside me. And then, everything started to change. 1 year after Lily was discharged, I landed the most significant contract of my career, a $2 million interior design project for a major real estate corporation. 3 years later, my company had grown 5-fold. What was once a small business with just a handful of employees had now become one of the leading interior design firms in the region. My name started appearing in business magazines. From zero to millionaire, the journey of Daniel. The man who rebuilt his life after adversity. A success story written in tears. My parents had indeed read those articles. They had indeed seen me on television, speaking at an entrepreneurial conference. But this time, I was no longer Daniel, the son who needed their help. I was Daniel, the self-made entrepreneur who had built everything from the ashes. A year ago, I sat down for an interview with Forbes after my company was recognized as one of the 50 fastest-growing interior design firms. The journalist looked at me, curiosity and admiration in her eyes. "Daniel, what drove you to achieve your success today?" I smiled, a smile only I could fully understand. I once had a family that should have been my greatest support, but they turned their backs on me when I needed them the most. I knelt before them, begging for help to save my daughter, and they told me they had already spent all their money on my brother's wedding. Her eyes widened in disbelief. "Are you saying they chose to throw a wedding instead of saving their own granddaughter's life?" I nodded. "That's exactly what I'm saying, and I want to thank them. Their coldness and cruelty drove me to prove I didn't need them. Because of them, I turned my anger into success. I didn't hide. I didn't speak in vague terms. I called them out by name. My parents, Martin and Linda. My brother, Ryan. Thank you for teaching me that family isn't about blood. It's about the people who stand by you when you need them the most." The interview aired, and then the headlines exploded. Millionaire entrepreneur reveals how his family abandoned his dying daughter for a lavish wedding. Shocking truth. Grandparents let their granddaughter suffer while throwing a luxury party. When money matters more than life. The chilling story of a heartless family. My story went viral. Millions were outraged. Social media was flooded with comments. "I can't believe such heartless people exist. What kind of grandparents treat their granddaughter like trash? Ryan's wife must regret marrying a man who would rather let his niece die than cancel a party." But the storm was only beginning for them. After the interview, my partners cut ties with my parents. Longtime clients canceled contracts. Business connections disappeared. The same people who once raised their glasses with them at lavish parties now avoided them like a plague. Because no one wants to work with monsters. My parents were pushed out of the business world. They once stood proudly among the successful. But now they had nothing left. Alone and ruined. And Ryan, he once thought he had won. He had an extravagant wedding, a beautiful wife, and a comfortable life. He used to look at me with pity, thinking I was a failure for kneeling before him. But now his world was falling apart. When his wife, Ava, read my interview, she was horrified. "Ryan, is this true?" he stammered, searching for an excuse. But the truth is the truth. A few days later, Ava filed for divorce. She couldn't stay married to a man who let his niece suffer to throw a party. Ryan lost everything. A marriage built on cold-heartedness was never going to last. And in the end, the heartless ones were left with nothing but themselves. Years ago, I had knelt before them, begging for help. They had laughed at me and told me I wasn't worth more than a party. But now, it was the world that had turned its back on them. And I had no regrets. Success wasn't just a sweet revenge against those who had turned their backs on me. It was also an opportunity to repay the people who had believed in me and stood by me during my darkest moments. I returned to my friends, colleagues, and employees, the ones who had given every last dollar to help save Lily. I wanted to help them to give back tenfold what they had given me. I called them to my office, handing them thick envelopes of cash. Some I even offered to pay off their debts or invest in their dreams. But they refused. They just smiled, their eyes warm, just like the day they had placed their last savings into my hands. "Boss, you don't need to do this. You've done something that not everyone can do. Overcome everything. We helped you because we believed in you, not because we expected anything in return." I couldn't find the words to respond. All I could do was grip their hands tightly, grateful beyond words, because these were the people who had shown me what true family meant. But there was one thing I couldn't let go: my in-laws. They had sold their home to save Lily, willingly choosing to live in a rental. And I couldn't let that sacrifice go unanswered. After Lily was discharged, I spent an entire year working to restore what they had lost. I secretly tracked down the new owner of their former house. I negotiated. I made offers. And eventually I repurchased it. The day I handed them the keys, my mother-in-law froze, her eyes welling with tears. "Daniel, how?" I smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. You gave me everything when I had nothing. This is the least I can do to repay you." My father-in-law stood silent for a moment, then clapped a firm hand on my shoulder, his eyes filled with pride. "I never once doubted you, son." We all sat together that night for an authentic family dinner, something I hadn't felt in a long time. 5 years after Lily's hospitalization, as our family prepared to welcome a new member, I decided it was time for a change. I bought a bigger home, not just for Emma, Lily, and our soon-to-be-born baby, but also so my in-laws could move in with us. They gave me a home when I had lost everything. Now, I wanted them to have a life where they no longer had to worry about anything. Lily was overjoyed to learn she was going to have a sibling, but when I told her that her grandparents would be living with us, she jumped up and hugged me tightly. "Daddy, I'll get to see Grandma and Grandpa every day." I smiled, ruffling her hair. "That's right, sweetheart. They'll always be here with you." Watching Lily's radiant smile, I felt it deep in my heart. Everything had finally come full circle. I thought I would never see my parents again. But unexpectedly, a month ago, while I was in my office reviewing contracts for a new project, my phone rang. An unknown number. I hesitated for a moment but picked up. "Daniel, it's Mom." That voice. The voice I hadn't heard in years. The voice of the woman who had watched me beg in desperation and turned her back on me. And now, that same voice carried regret and pleading. Can you help us?" I didn't say a word. She let out a shaky breath before continuing, her voice trembling. We're in trouble. We mortgaged the house, and now the bank is about to seize it. We need $200,000 to keep it." $200,000. I remembered that day, when I needed just $120,000 to save my daughter's life. And they had chosen a party over their granddaughter. I remembered the moment I knelt before them, begging for help, and they refused without hesitation. I remembered my father's cold eyes, Ryan's smug smile, and their voices telling me that a wedding mattered more than life. And now, when they needed me, they thought I would help? I took a deep breath, keeping my voice calm. "Mom, do you remember the day I came begging for your help?" Silence. "That day, I knelt in front of you and Dad. I told you that without the money, Lily might die. Do you remember?" Her voice cracked. "I remember, but you refused. You said Ryan's wedding was more important. You let me walk away without a second thought." She started sobbing. "I know, I was wrong. But please, Daniel, we really need you." I let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Let me ask you this, Mom. Between a party and your house, which one is more important?" She fell silent. I continued. "That day, you chose a party over saving your granddaughter. And today, after losing everything, you think I would choose to save you." She sobbed harder. "But we're family, Daniel. Family helps each other." "Family? Does family help each other?" I laughed, but it was a bitter, hollow laugh. "No, Mom. My real family already helped me. It was my in-laws, my colleagues, strangers who had more kindness than my blood." She tried again, desperate. "You can't be this heartless. You can't let us lose everything." I spoke firmly. "Mom, I lost you and Dad the day you abandoned me and Lily." Then, without hesitation, I hung up. After putting Lily to bed that night, I sat in the living room and told Emma and my in-laws everything. I told them about my mother's call, about how they were on the verge of losing their home, and about how I had refused to help them without hesitation. I thought Emma would agree with me, but instead, she just looked at me for a long time, then gently took my hand. "Daniel, I understand why you don't want to help them, but maybe you should think about it again." I frowned, unable to believe what I was hearing. "Emma, they abandoned our daughter when she was dying. I can't just forget that." She nodded, her eyes still as soft as ever. "I know, and I'm not saying you have to forgive them, but do this not for them but for yourself, so that one day, you won't feel any regrets or burdens weighing on you." I turned to my in-laws, expecting them to take my side. But my father-in-law shook his head and spoke calmly. "Son, we're not asking you to forgive them, but sometimes helping someone doesn't make you weak. It proves that you're stronger than they are." My mother-in-law added softly, "You have everything now, a loving family, a strong career, a bright future. And them, they have nothing left but despair. If you help them, you'll be the one who truly wins in the end." I didn't say a word. I just nodded, stood up, and walked out onto the balcony. I stood silently for hours that night, staring at the dark sky. I replayed every moment from that day, the day I begged them, the moment I knelt before Ryan, the way they turned away without hesitation. I had thought I would feel satisfied rejecting them, but strangely I felt nothing at all, just emptiness. The following day, I called Mason, a close friend who worked in finance. Mason, I need you to check something for me. Are my parents really about to lose their house? Or is this just another one of their tricks? Mason didn't ask any questions. He responded, "Give me 3 hours." 3 hours later, I received an email from him. The information was confirmed. My parents were broke. The house had been mortgaged. Without $200,000, they would lose everything. I stared at my computer screen, feeling something indescribable. They once had it all: money, status, connections. But now they were on the edge of ruin, and I was the only person who could save them. I took a deep breath and dialed my mother's number. She picked up immediately, her voice filled with hope and desperation. "Daniel?" I kept my voice steady. "Mom, I'll help, but on one condition. Anything, just tell me. You and Dad need to come to my company, in person. I will give you the money directly." She was silent for a few seconds. Then, she responded hastily, Okay, we'll come right away." That afternoon, I sat in my office, a black suitcase neatly placed on my desk. Inside was $200,000 in cash, 20 stacks of $10,000 each, arranged perfectly. This money meant nothing to me now, but to them, it was their last chance to hold onto the luxurious life they once worshipped. The door opened. My parents stepped in. They no longer carried the same confidence and authority they once did. My father looked gaunt, my mother worn out, her hair streaked with silver. They sat across from me, their eyes filled with hope. I said nothing. I reached forward and unlatched the suitcase, flipping it open before them. Inside, 20 neat stacks of crisp $100 bills gleamed under the office lights. My mother gasped, eyes wide. My father swallowed hard. I pushed the suitcase toward them. "This is $200,000. Enough to save your house." My father snapped the case shut immediately, clutching it like a lifeline, nodding repeatedly. "Thank you, Daniel. Thank you. You finally understand how important family is." I let out a cold chuckle. "No, Dad, you're wrong. Family is important. Just not this one." Their faces stiffened. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms, staring them down. "Do you know why I'm giving you this money today?" My mother shook her head. My father stayed silent. "It's not because I pity you. It's not because I want to reconnect. I want you to understand one thing. This is the last time.